Okay, so this is our June AAC Learning Networks presentation, and I welcome Griffin Bennett, who is our speaker this evening. Cass is a autistic and ADHD self-advocate. She is a parent of multiple autistic children, including a young multimodal communicator. She knows firsthand that AAC can change lives, and you're going to get that up close and personal tonight, and I'm so excited. She's a wealth of amazing experience and information. Her youngest child is on a robust high-tech AAC that started at the age of 2. And she has stepped into our NWACS outreach coordinator role because she wishes she had known about AAC when first embarking on this quest to support her child with communication. And she hopes that sharing her family's toddler AAC experience will decrease gatekeeping, which is always a tough word for us to hear. Cass wants to empower parents to take an active role in their child's AAC journey. So with that, Cass, you could go ahead and share your screen and we'll get started.
All right. Okay, so my topic was AAC and early childhood, right? And as I was putting these things together, well, with a literacy bent, right? Because all of our AAC learning networks in 2024 have a literacy bent to them. So as I was putting these things together, really the things that I kept coming back to that I felt were notable or more unique about our journey, and that I sort of found harder to find information about supporting my daughter with, was that sort of intersection of starting AAC, as a toddler, as a 2-year-old, being a Gestalt language processor, and trying to do emergent literacy activities. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. First, I'm going to have Marcy give a little overview here of the Comprehensive Literacy for All framework.
Sure. So if you've been with us in our different presentations over the past 4 months, we have been really repeating this message about this framework, and it's called the Comprehensive Literacy for All framework. And what I particularly love about it is it has this uh, this easy visual. And so you're thinking about your child or the child that you're working with, and you ask these 4 questions at the top. And then if you answered no to any one of those questions, then you fall into what's called daily emergent interventions. And if you answered yes to all 4 of those questions, you fall into the category of daily conventional interventions. And I love this because I think as a parent, when I first learned about AAC, there were like 12 different things that you're supposed to juggle in your head. And this to me makes it much more clear. Oh, wow, here on the bottom, if my child is daily emergent, I have these 5 things that I should pay attention to. So if you're not familiar with this, I would encourage you to go back and watch, I think it was February or March's, maybe February. February, it was very parent friendly, just an overview of comprehensive literacy for all. And go back and watch that. And yeah, that's my overview. Go ahead, Cass. Well, yeah. So I think what's going to happen tonight, and what Cass and I talked about is, because when I first learned about Cass and her journey with her daughter, I just couldn't believe all the fun ideas that she had developed, and I thought, wow, you got to share that. So her daughter is emerging literate, and hopefully she'll give us some examples in this presentation about shared reading and independent reading or shared writing, or access to the alphabet. Maybe not all of those things, but we'll definitely touch on some of those things because I know she's got some great ideas. Go ahead, Cass.
Okay. And then that last bullet point is that it is so important particularly when we're talking about kids this young, that we are incorporating just honestly supporting them as communicators too, as part of this, because that is a really vital part of um, of this journey for them. I will say for this, I ended up um, barely touching shared writing because I felt like that was the one spot that there are probably a gazillion other presentations that would have wonderful, robust information for everyone, and sort of less specific to GLP and toddler AAC. So who am I? You actually got a lovely rundown from Mercy. So I am NWACS's outreach coordinator. I am just a mom, though, as far as I'm not an SLP. So I am probably going to say a few things that are definitely not SLP talk, right? Um, and that's okay. Usually I am presenting about our toddler AAC experience. Usually my presentations are something like what I wish our early supports team had known about how toddler AAC could help families thrive, or supporting your child with robust high-tech AAC, things like that, right? So this literacy thing is a brand new topic for me. And I am excited and also a little intimidated because to be honest, um, I have told my husband that like the one thing I need school to do with our daughters is to teach them to read. That was like I was like, I could probably homeschool, but man, the reading part just scares me, right? Like that just scares me in my bones. Um, so it's kind of wild to be here, going to be sharing some things. Um, and I'm really glad to be here. So what's different about this presentation too is that usually you would hear a ton about my daughter. You would see a lot of her. You would see videos of her. And because this may go on YouTube, you will not see that. What we will do instead, if there's interest, because usually my toddler AC presentation has, you can see those little thumbnails on the bottom right, a ton of like videos of her as a 2-year-old AAC user. So if that's of interest, after we turn the cameras off, I have those, right? So if anybody's interested, we can stay on and kind of go through those if you want. So, all right, it is January 2022. And I said her name right then. Her AAC device has arrived. We're going to pretend it didn't happen. We are excited and intimidated, and excited and intimidated. We did not have the support of our early support team, early intervention team, or our private SLP at the time, because she did not do low tech. She would not engage with any kind of communication board, any kind of picture, visual exchange. We weren't even trying PECs, like we weren't even trying a strict picture exchange. She just wanted nothing to do with visuals for communication. So because of that, she was thought to be not a good candidate for a robust high-tech AAC. Long story short, we ended up being able to do it anyway. But because of that, I was still having to see our providers every week. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going against their advice. I better get this right, right? I have to do this perfect, because I'm doing it on my own. So I was pretty terrified at the time, actually. Um, and the great thing about toddlers actually is that you can have the perfect plan, and she probably would have changed it anyway, right? Even if I had been fully confident in my plan, I was still working with an autistic 2-year-old, right? So I had to let go of this idea that it was going to be perfect. Um, and at the beginning, what she wanted to do was to hang out on our landing and behind the blinds, and study her device on her own, which means stimming on her device. She would press buttons over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. She was really drawn to the intonation rich phrasing. We have Proloquo to go. So there's an expressions folder, and that was the first place that she like found a home in her device. She would go up there and just press buttons over and over again, um, which I won't talk about too much in this, But if you stay after, I will. Yeah. So biggest effects for us of that journey that has been going on for quite some time now, have been communication, yes, right? Yeah, communication. But then these other three that I honestly did not see coming at all, right? The impact that it had on our family bonding, which does tie into books and the story that that picture is about, you'll get to hear. Um, the way that uh, leaning into modeling describing words around our sensory experiences uh, empowered her with language to describe her own, right? And that really was profoundly, um, I think, tied into how she started taking a lot of chances around sensory experiences that she had been really, really not interested in taking any chances with, right? Because we could talk about them. She had a way to talk about them, and she knew that the words meant the same thing, right? And that was pretty cool. The biggest thing, though, was the impact on regulation. She was having a really challenging time at the time that we started AAC. She was 2 and could not communicate. She had 5 to 10 words, and she was frustrated. And that was very much kind of emerging with really challenging behaviors, right? And she was, I'm trying to think of how to talk about this in a way that respects her privacy, right? Um, but she was very clearly really frustrated in ways that were kind of dangerous, right? Um, so I kind of realized about 6 months into that, about 6 months, maybe 8 months after we had started at all, that I couldn't remember the last time I had been headbutt, right? Which if you had told me that 8 months before, I would have been like, haha, that's really funny, right? Like, don't, ugh, like, also go away. But it really did have such an incredible impact on our regulation. Now, that's not to say we like are like, there's nothing, no dysregulation at all, right? But it really did change the overall dynamics because it wasn't constant for her. The dysregulation was no longer constant, right? And it had profound effects across environments for her as an individual, for us as a family of 4, and for extended family. Oh my gosh, we hadn't been able to have any sort of relationship with extended family because of COVID, um, and because she did not like anyone to be in our home. She would just be completely dysregulated the whole time. Um, and being able to talk about our family members, add them to the device, kind of bring them into our home, right? Without bringing them into our home. And she would practice their names, which I think helped her process when I was talking about them, right? Um, so we were able to see family in OT, in speech sessions, and with her school experience. So some themes that emerged in our toddler AAC journey. Experimenting. There is no handbook for a 2-year-old Gestalt language processor, which, by the way, we were sort of just guessing on at the time, right? It's not, she didn't have any real intelligible utterances. She had really long babbling, but it couldn't be understood at all. So the idea of like adding things to her gestalts to her device was a non-starter because we had no idea what they were. um, so but there certainly was not a handbook. I could barely find a professional to talk to me, honestly, at the time. Um, Another theme is modeling without expectation. Gosh, there's a video that's a couple days after we got our device where you hear me say, oh, where's the banana? And I think it's the last time I got away with saying that, as far as being able to sort of prompt her to just perform on her device for me. She did not want to do that. So I started doing modeling without expectation without knowing that term, right? I didn't learn that term until 14 months ago. but I'd been doing it. Number three, prioritizing regulation and connection. Actually, I'm going to back up. So modeling without expectation and prioritizing regulation and connection are together, right? Because the more demands I put on her, the more dysregulated she got. The more I tried to, let's say, we know she wants the banana. She's gesturing, she's reaching where the bananas are, right? And I would just get the banana and come over and then model on her device about the banana and what I was doing and what we were doing, right? Um, Another school of thought around that is that I should have said, say it on your device, say it on your talker, right? And then gotten the banana and given her, and that to me did not prioritize her regulation or our connection. And it placed her device as sort of a barrier to her getting what she's asking for. And I really felt like that was not a good idea for long term, her having a good feeling about her device, right? Um, so leaning into her interests was a huge theme. I would stay up really late, adding all of her favorite things to it. And because that was sort of the way to get her engaged. That was our entry point, right? And then I could expand, right? But fringe was sort of our entry point. Um, Incorporating into routines and play. Um, that's a big part of my AAC, my toddler AAC presentation. Presuming competence. That part about the landing when she would go, she was stim on her device, right? Um, it turns out she was motor planning. She started whispering from that landing. And anytime I got close, she would stop. She did not want me part of it. She had never imitated us in gesture or vocalization, ever. Um, like we tried sign first, of course, right? Those the baby signs, and she would sort of look at us like, good for you guys. Like I'm definitely not doing that. And um, after probably a month, I want to say. It was long enough that, gosh, it got hard hearing those words pressed, over and over and over again, right? I'm not going to lie to anyone about that part, right? Because then you're not prepared. um, but hearing the whispering start, and then she started imitating confidently the device and wanting me to be there, wanting me to see it. And then by 2 months, 3 months, she was prompting her own immediate echolalia. She would go through till she found what she wanted to say, press it, and then say it with her mouth too, which that was how she preferred to communicate, including like full sentences. It was just wild. For me at the time, involving the whole family. It was a family affair. It still is. AAC is all over our house. Um, Involving Big Sister with modeling was incredibly helpful. And Big Sister like actively still models. And frankly, she'll come up when we get to some literacy. She's how I close out the literacy part. Supporting her as a Gestalt language processor became, I would say, so the two things that I think really have helped a journey as far as communication are A, robust high-tech AAC, two, or B, supporting her as a GLP, right? I think they're probably equally important. And then number 9, adjusting as skills develop, right? In toddlerhood, things are moving fast. And so we kept upping grid sizes, and so and remembering that it's a long game, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So guess what? Nothing changed about these slides except for the heading. Themes in supporting her in emergent literacy. They are the same, which I didn't know until I made the presentation. So we'll get to some of these. And so, yeah, here we are. I want to give everybody an idea of what I thought shared reading should look like. I love reading. I love reading. Reading's like my favorite thing in the world. I read hundreds of books a year. Like I'm so into reading, and I always was. So it was really pretty devastating that neither one of my children wanted to be read to between the ages of 12 months and basically their fourth birthday. So that is that was a long, long time. Um, and I actually reading comprehensive literacy for all, and listening to SLPs and professionals talk about how important reading is. That I never hear that mentioned. I hear it from other parents, that kids seem just really overwhelmed, right, by all of the sensory input of reading at a certain stage. And so we really want to read. It's not that we don't have time. It's not that we're not prioritizing it. It's like some of our kids are super dysregulated by it, and we're not having engaged, positive experiences around literacy when that's the case, right? So by necessity, we sort of have to make different decisions. How it did not look at that age. Okay. So I'm going to talk about leaning into deep interests because this is like maybe my favorite part. um, I think that when kids are recently diagnosed, right, you're given this huge list of things to watch out for, and everything about your child is pathologized. And to me, that's a really big shame, because deep interests, honestly, are one of the most joyful parts about being autistic for me, right? Um, and you can see that picture over there. That's our play is different. How we do things is a little different, right? Playing magnet tiles, for my daughter, she just wanted to raise them to the sun and see like the way the colors looked through for about a year before she ever built like put two together to build anything. Um, so being able to just follow and lean into her interests from a literacy perspective is actually not only like enjoyable, but also exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Which rarely happens along this journey in my experience. Um, so I kind of came up with this theme party analogy because I love theme parties. I am like one of those, if you've ever been to one of my kids' birthday parties, it's production. Um, I wore a costume 2 years ago. It's a whole thing. And I started thinking about, gosh, there's so many components of a theme party, right? There's so many things you can do as a theme party, right? You don't have to do all of them. You don't at all. But let's say somebody has a deep interest in something. There are so many different directions you can go, right? Um, so theme party, right? What components, like when you're thinking about planning a theme party, this is mine, it could affect, right? It could affect all of these. It could affect the theme, could touch all of these things. Party favors, gifts, venue, snacks, invitations, activities at the party, costumes, photo backdrop, music, seating, signage, balloons, table settings, cake design, colors, decorations. Obviously, that header covers a few of them. And it really felt sort of analogous to thinking about all the different directions that, let's say that your kid is really into Frozen, like mine, right? Um, and thinking about the different ways that you could support that interest with an eye on engagement and literacy skills, right? You can go at it from so many different angles. Because right now, in my opinion, the huge goal is engagement, right? And I popped that little chart up there again, um, to make that point. So, all right, we're gonna start with Scaredy Squirrel. In our house, um, I could not read our Scaredy Squirrel books. Our entry point There were 3 animated adaptations of Scaredy Squirrel, 3 books. There's the main one and Makes a Friend and Scaredy Squirrel at Night. Um, we watched those, and because we watched those and they loved them, she let me read the books. That was sort of a way in for us. Um, and because she let me read those books, she let me read more Scaredy Squirrel books, right? Which she would not have done without that. Um, the this story sort of makes me like a little emotional. Um, I talked about the impact on family connection, right? I'm sure bedtime reading is part of many families' routines, right? It usually is. Um, in our house, that was really fraught. um, we could only do it by watching read alouds, and I'll get to that. Um, but this age, um, my youngest was 3, I think, and my oldest was 6. Yes, and my oldest was still an emergent reader too, and my youngest wanted the same book at bedtime every night. It was one of the Scary Squirrel at Night. She just wanted that one. So we would do a video like read aloud, and then each girl would pick a book. And my youngest was Scary Squirrel at Night every night. Um, and what happens when you do that with an emergent reader like her older sister is that they memorize it, obviously, right? So her older sister, through absolutely no fault of her own, right? She started sort of kind of pacing younger sister out of her book selection, for lack of a better way to say it. Um, because she was enjoying reading it aloud to us, right? And it's not that anything was wrong, but I felt sad about it. I was like, what could I do to sort of bring her back into this, right? Because I know she wants to be, but she can't mimic it. You know what I mean? She can't memorize it and say it like Big Sister can. And I'm like, Scary Squirrel has all these lists in it, right? I'm going to add some of these lists just to a folder in her device. I'm not going to worry about if I'm doing it right. I'm not going to like put core words in. I'm not going to like do blah, blah, blah. This was like a family thing that I was solving from a family angle. Um, and gosh, we did that, and her eyes lit up when she saw that I put those on there. Um, and she would do her parts, right? Sister would do parts, she would do her parts. And it was 6 months of that. And I like could cry thinking I have chills talking about it because it was so special, right? Um, it was also the first time that that I can remember that they took turns, like that they independently knew when to take turns, which was pretty cool. And also Scaredy Squirrel was our entry point into her first chapter book on the bottom right. Which we never would have been to, right? Okay, and then I've got Room on the Broom. Put the multi in multimedia. So our entry point there was an audiobook with a song in the car. And because I don't know if anybody has ever checked out from, Libby, the audiobook of that, but it has a really cute song at the end. And the girls got really into that. And so because the song was so great, she let us do the animated adaptation, right, of that, which then led to us being able to do the animated read aloud, which then let us be able to do the physical book. We could not have started with the physical book, right? So I just want to give these examples because I want any families listening to this to know that they're not alone if this is the case, right? Because it sort of feels like almost a taboo topic, right? That your kids won't let you read them. So sort of trying to think of those various entry points what was something I was always trying to do. Okay, so another book situation. Super simple songs. This is my happy face. Our our entry point was also a song, Gestalt language processor. Um, to this one, obviously, because I think it starts out as a song. And then she wanted the physical book. We went to a Big Sisters book fair. So we got that. Um, and then you see my post in family AAC, screen time in AAC. 4-year-old and I are watching some super simple songs together this afternoon, and it turned into a great opportunity to model, chat about, and use feelings vocabulary. Does anyone else happily use screen time like this? Blah, 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 blah. So that day, I got out her device, and just as she was sort of vibing out, I started using her device to talk about what was going on and to model where those words were, right? And then she would come over and press them. And like now she knows where they are. Like she actively uses those, um, which she doesn't use most of the other feelings words, right? So sort of thinking about how to engage that, um, those moments, right? Where it kind of clicks in a way that is like, oh man, I want to go back there. That means something to me now, is a really big part of the puzzle to me, I think. Um, so there's her, I got physical book, independent reading up there. Of course, the animated read aloud on YouTube. So then we get more. We're at Frozen. Um, Captions on during movies. From a very early age, we did that. And that's supposed to be good. Don't know if it is, but it's supposed to be good. Well, another thing we'll do is that she has a camera, and she loves posing her figures everywhere and taking pictures of them. So then we will talk about what they're doing using AAC, right? Once like the pictures, which is really fun. The another thing, we do Apple Music and turn on the lyrics, so that it's scrolling along, right? Um, and she loves getting on the microphone and singing. She doesn't usually want to hear herself, so she will put on headphones. Um, and and she also, if from that singing standpoint, she really likes it when it has the Bluetooth enabled, so that there is some sound coming through of the music. It's not just her voice. Um, and let's see here. That's actually like 2 days ago, the bottom right. Actually doing physical book shared reading. You can see she's wearing an Elsa dress. She's very into Frozen, and has been for like 3 years. The top right, that is something I am going to show you on the next slide. Tar Heel Reader is, I'm sure everyone knows what Tar Heel Reader is, but a collection of books that are made by folks all over the world, maybe? I don't know, certainly all over the country, that anyone can use for your own purposes, right? And what I didn't know until February was that you can import those into Pictello. And when you do that, do you see how it highlights, say the word letter is highlighted? Because Pictello highlights the word as it's reading it out loud. So she really loves that. And there's an Elsa and Anna. So here's more about that. Here's like one of our Pictello things. She's really into bees. So we've got a bees folder with bee stories in it. All of her favorites. We're still leaning into her favorites, right? That's what we're doing here. The color green. Panda bear, where are you? Butterflies, cupcakes, Anna and Elsa. Here we are. These are about green. Green can fly, green can flutter, green can swim, green can hop. And we do these together. Like she really enjoys going through them together, and I will often have her device out too, so that we can kind of I can sort of model where those words are for her. While I'm on tools, the books is on YouTube, and they also have a subscription service. And some of them are a little too animated, if you ask me. But a lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't. So, I think particularly when we're talking about really young kids, like if we're talking about toddlers, like they're not going to do any harm, I don't think, and having the really animated ones, they're engaged. And then I love the way that they they highlight the text as it's being said, because that she really seems to follow it. And I also love that I can find books that relate to sort of the skill development we're working on. Like right now we're working on like location words, right? The like I'm in the back, I'm in the front, on top of, below, all of that stuff. So I had that bottom left one for that. Um, okay. During play. Um, this one feels a little controversial. Um, we will use AAC as like dialogue in pretend play for figures. Um, and uh, on one hand, when I was doing it at first, I felt a little uncomfortable with it. To be honest, I was like, is this, I don't know if this is right. She really loved it. And I think it's because sometimes she doesn't, like she is, now that she's a Gestalt language processor and she is speaking a lot more. She is not necessarily able to be understood, right? But she has sort of a fraught relationship sometimes with the idea that her device is her voice, right? So the idea of being able to play with vocabulary, play with words, and on her device so that she'll be able to reference it later, right? Using stuffed animals, using all the things around her house that don't have a voice in their body, has been really fun and really helpful. Um, and we have the little toy AAC devices too from Butterfly Pig and all of that. And it was actually getting those that made me realize, why haven't I tried like actually using it? If I'm giving them a non-speech generating device, because it's too small to be a speech generating device because it's for toys, we could use hers, right? So we did. And during play has been it was the only way when she was 3 that I got her engaged in core words. So using her interests. So that picture is in Kanto, but we have one for Frozen as well. That is all of the characters and places, and then all core in the middle, right? And so that was we would actually right there that Antonio and Isabella we're climbing up a mountain. Um, device is actually part of play, which is pretty fun. And I was always adding to her device with her deep loves, right? Her deep current interests, right? And losing some sleep over it. Okay. So Marcy and I are going to talk a little bit about this because I'm going to talk about it from the parent perspective. um, so I felt really alienated the first time I read Comprehensive Literacy for All, which feels like blasphemy, and I hope nobody comes for me about that. But being a Gestalt language processor, my child couldn't answer questions. And almost all of now I have these images up here for a reason, because they do say ask for participation instead of just ask questions. A lot of the like memes and images around car and crowd in the car are ask questions. And when you like Gestalt language processors do not answer questions until stage 4. I know because it's stage 4 now, right? And she can answer questions now. And that was sort of the primary indicator, because she couldn't, right? And it felt like I was excluded from being able to even touch literacy, which felt really, really bad. Um, and I actually ended up using some of the, like, the crowd in the car. I would use the C and the D with her, even though technically I wasn't supposed to do that, right? Because she wasn't necessarily engaged um, in the way with car that she was supposed to be before I was going to use crowd, right? Um, but she could do like the completion part because of the echolalia, Gestalt language processing. She would do that part, and also like anytime I brought it back to life, like our real life, right, tied it to something in our real life. That's just how I relate to her with books. That was my general commentary, right? Um, so yeah. So Mercy, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I will definitely chime in. I am so, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm so appreciative that you pulled up this slide. And I also feel a little bit blasphemous in saying that I agree with you as a speech pathologist. I think one thing to remember, is that these things like follow the car, comment, ask a question, or ask for participation and respond were constructed as part of a very rigid research study. And in order to do the research study with the correct procedures and processes, they have to dial it in tight. Um, and I do think that that sometimes leads, um, it's too rigid, right? But what we try to do is we try to take the essence of the research and then apply it. And Cass, I think you've just done a marvelous job of kind of explaining. Wow, like C for car, comment. That seems reasonable. I can comment on a page. I know my child won't answer a question. I'm going to skip that one. Um, and discuss the D and crowd, discuss based on your personal experiences. Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. We just were, whatever the book is, Frozen, and creating an ice sculpture. We just put ice cubes in our milkshake yesterday, like, so definitely you have shared kind of what resonates for you and also what's meaningful for your child. So I think that's all I'll say about that.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And my understanding based on like doing some modules on Tar Heel Reader about car and crowd, like all that good stuff, is that um, that's not necessarily their intention, right? That asking questions be part of it at all, right? It's inviting participation. Um, I really wish we could just take the word ask out of it. Is where I'm going with that. Um, and and I'll say a little bit more about that because even though the ask was taken away, what is replaced though is a tell me, show me. And that's where we come to that modeling without expectation bit that I said was still the theme. Um, because my daughter does not react well to demands, right? And being being that our primary goal is engagement here, right? For me, just finding better ways to comment was a much better path, right? Rather than putting a demand on her. So I just want to throw that out there that if it resonates with anyone else, that was us. So also better way to comment if folks want support on figuring out how to comment. Declarative language is really good. And this comes from and the next comes Al .com, which has a whole article on declarative language. All these images came from that. I will wait for a second if anybody wants to take a picture of this slide, you can. 5, 4, 3.
What's the website, Cass? I couldn't.
And the next comes L. It's very small on the bottom of the, it's easier to read on the blue one. If you look to the bottom.
Thank you.
Yeah. And maybe this isn't everyone. I know there are some kids that are fine with that, right? But for us, that's been our experience. And I'm going to talk about recorded audio. because Gestalt language processors is my favorite part. So ways we use recorded audio. Um, Playing with language and fun and engagement. Um, so independence and autonomy and accessibility. So that whole part about she didn't like to be read to, you know what she really liked? When I recorded books using a chameleon reader, which is a tool that you can see that little pen there, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more. But when I would record them using the stickers that you can see, um, she could read herself the book. And she thought that was the coolest thing in the entire world. Um, and then sometimes, actually, what would happen is she would read the book to me. Um, we also, things like social stories were not accessible to her. I see that all the time, folks giving social stories to 3-year-olds who have communication delays. And I just want to be like, guys, like, ugh, um, man, it's a lot to process, right? And they can't reference it again, right? Like they can't read it again. And I was like, what if I put chameleon reader stickers on all of our social stories, right? And she can go back and read them when feels good to her. And she does. We had a situation with one of our OTs was leaving but was moving to another practice. And after a big break, we were going to rejoin her, which is kind of a complicated thing. We had providers go away for good before, but we hadn't had somebody that it was like a temporary goodbye. So we made this social story about that. And I'll talk about sort of where I put the stickers too, because that does matter and does have different impacts depending on where you put the stickers. And just visuals, right? Like all of our number magnets have recorded audio chameleon stickers. Our letters have recorded audio stickers on them. Those are magnets, the 13, 14, and 15. So also test driving, auditioning, intonation-rich model phrases. So that book in the middle, the yes, no book, is a really great book. It's a first conversation about consent. And you'll see I have a sticker there on the main sort of text, right? Like that sticker is still in the top left. But then I also have a sticker on all the dialogue boxes, right? And I'm saying those with really rich intonation. So that when she's going through and reading, she's hearing, I don't know, and maybe later, or I'm not sure, not today, that kind of thing. And she has picked up language from that. Another fun sort of the test driving are books that have a lot of repeats in them, right? So for instance, we have Where Do I Sleep? And Where Do I Sleep is on the first line of every page, right? Every vignette. And so I put a sticker on Where Do I Sleep? And then I put a sticker also on the rest of the page. So Where Do I Sleep is its isolated thing. And she has picked that up and now mitigates it with ease. Where Do I blank became a stage 2, stage 3, which is pretty cool. Let's see here. On visuals, I'll show an example of that in a minute. And then we also use recorded audio on her AAC device. Her app, her program allows for recorded audio. I don't do it for everything. I do it for things that I'm trying to highlight. So I would do it for test driving model phrases, right? If I couldn't really do that, to be honest with you guys, at the time that I needed to do that at her age and stage, I couldn't do that because I could not even guess at her gestalts. So it was like, do I add the whole world? I'm not sure. So the way I did it was actually around our house versus putting it in her device. But right now, for instance, like we've been working on problem solving together and sort of those communication breakdowns and repairs and trying to make it past the like yeah, we're still not getting it. We're still not communicating what we want to communicate here. And so I have like a page that I've created in her device that has like two choices and then something else, right? And not that one, as two phrases. And those are in recorded audio because we're trying to sort of work on new additional phrases to be able to point me in the right direction, right? For helping us problem solve. So the chameleon reader. I wanted to play this really quick. Oh, wait a minute. It's going to open up Instagram, isn't it? Hold on. You don't actually need the sound on that one, but if you can watch what's happening, you see it's on every page. It's correlating. This one is not actually as useful because I ended up putting so many examples of mine. All right, we're going to go back to, oops. How do I get back to my Canva? Come back. There we are. But here, so here's more of our intonation rich phrases. Come on, let's see here. Oh no. Okay. After we close out, I'm going to pull up, actually we'll go back here. There it is. There's ours. I was like, where's my image of my little, oh my gosh, alphabet that has the letter sounds. So if you can see in the top middle, that's what that is. And I use that a lot actually, because this example is later in the presentation, but she has a lot of words that sound a lot alike when she says them with her mouth. Like, and she loves all the things. So an example is green, clean, and queen. I cannot tell the difference, right? When she says them, I can barely tell the difference when I say them. So one way I will have the conversation with her now is I will go over to that and I would say, oh, do you mean green? Right? And it will say it out loud and then she'll like confirm or not, right? And that for some reason is a lot more okay with her than me questioning her to do it again without any sort of assistance, right? More intonation-rich model phrases around our house. I mentioned the visuals around our house. I made this project that you see as a parent self-regulation project around our house. I needed visual cues for my own regulation. And so did my husband for that matter. Like we needed some adult support for nervous systems. And I realized though that they were completely inaccessible to her. And so I wanted her to sort of be able to access them if she wanted to. And so I put chameleon stickers on all of them. And they have a lot of intonation rich language on them. And she picked them up. But the first one she picked up was the one at the very bottom. And so she will go over there and she'll like hold it up and then she'll say with her mouth, I need my coffee. Which is actually a lesson around like she's making a joke, right? She thought it was hilarious that she would be sitting there being like, I need my coffee. And so that's the one, that was the first one that she picked up. So thinking about with our Gestalt language processors, how to make those situations like memorable, making those modeling opportunities memorable. Because I would go over every morning when I'm like getting my coffee, I would press it, and it has the most like dreary like tone to it. It's like, I need my coffee, right? And she thinks it's great. So I think a lot of parents, we can get caught up in like, when I'm modeling language, I need to model it perfectly. Like I need to model perfect articulation, right? When for our Gestalt language processors, it's kind of the opposite, right? You need to like make a fun memory with that modeling, with both your body and the intonation. That's what you're going for. Uh, so we have this AAC Alphabet Adventures book, which is lovely. And I was going through and we were using both the letter sounds board that I have and her AAC device to talk about the letters. And I realized I didn't have the book has ch, sh, and th in the book. And I was like, well, shoot, I don't know. I can't mom. I can't, I don't, there's no, it's not anywhere. So I used recorded audio to make those letters in device. So she can now listen to the sounds of ch, th, and sh on her device. And if you remember the feelings book, the happy, this is my happy face book. So I really, ooh, my daughter is really into feelings. And she found this poster that I had had since her older sister was 2. So it had been not in use, like in her living room for like 3 years. And she found it and had me put stickers on it.
Surprised. Kind. Relaxed.
So I just did them all with a lot of intonation, right? Bored is bored, all that good stuff. And she loves it and she uses it. And actually, she argued with me over one of them over here.
Sad.
Sad.
Scared. Jealous. Confused.
It's so weird to listen to my voice do that. You guys, like I'm trying not to.
I got most of them. I'll get bored one more time just in case.
Okay, there's sleepy or tired. I can't tell. But whichever it was a sleepy face, right? But then I think it had tired as the word. So because it had the text of tired, I said tired. And she argued with me and said, no, sleepy, which it was the first time she had interpreted a visual, a visual of any kind, much less a feelings face visual, and corrected me, which was like wild. I was like, you're right. I mean, it doesn't say that, but that's what it's saying. So well done. Okay. I'm going to just talk about for a second, adjusting as skills develop, right? Like you'll need to, I have to constantly reassess text settings and modeling practices and literacy activity readiness as she grows. When you start at 2 years old, your practices have to shift pretty quickly. And so like when she was 2, we moved up grid sizes a lot, right? We didn't just start and stay there because I wanted her to have access to more vocabulary and quickly. And I also knew that once we sort of settled in, we would stay there for a while, right? Because motor plan, right? And I didn't necessarily want to mess with that too much. So we're still at 7 by 11, which we were at by her 3rd birthday after starting. I want to always say that I started at our first session, I think it was at 3 by 5. It was very small, right? And I was like, this is not enough, right? And just kept increasing. And so I tell families now, I'm like, start wherever you think you should start, and then go up by 2. Just do that, right? Like wherever it is, just go up by 2. You will thank yourself later. And so that was sort of my guiding rule, but we're still at 7 by 11, and I think we need to change that soon. So that's sort of I'm calling myself in on that. The one thing that I am really interested in right now with her is sort of transitioning from an emphasis on the image to an emphasis on the text. When we start toddlers, we tend to really promote the image, right? Like we're trying to like kind of get them to resonate with the image meaning, right? Because they certainly can't read. I mean, most of them. She is not hyperlexic. I do not have any hyperlexic children. So I didn't realize that that was something that I could change until probably 9 months or so ago, and I have done that. So all that is like in the buttons. I just adjusted the text size. I really upped it, and so that made the image much smaller. And now when you look at it, the text is so much more prevalent. And it's small, but I think it makes a difference. Same with like, do they have access to the keyboard or does it open an alphabet? Is your predictive text enabled? One cool thing I did recently is I actually changed in her keyboard to have it be her favorite color as the text, right? So her favorite color is green. And I was like, I wonder if like she'll resonate with that as being hers, right? Like if she'll kind of get that more. And she's spending so much more time in the keyboard because now it's coming up green, right? And I changed the font to being that chalk duster, which looks a lot more like kind of a kid wrote it. And so she's a lot more engaged with the text. So just throwing that out there. The message bar. Changing the size of the message bar might be in order. That was something that when my daughter was very young, I didn't care much about the size of the message bar. It was very, very small. And now that she is doing sentences and things like that, you actually want that to be more prevalent, right? So changing that. And sometime soon, I want to change her device to just having text at the top, which is a huge change. And so how I am sort of working that out is I've changed it on my modeling device. And she is fine with it so far, and she would tell me if she's not. So she still knows where everything is, right? It's all the same, and I haven't changed it on her device yet. But I do want her to focus more on the text, right? Moving forward. She just turned 5. I should have said that, right? But she's going into kindergarten. So take a look at the alphabet options on your device. Do you have a phonetic keyboard? Do you not? Just take a look, right? See what's there, see what you can do. And then start modeling spelling, which didn't occur to me until really recently. And I have started doing that. So I mentioned the green, queen, clean situation. I now will model, if I'm not around our board, I can also use her device and say, oh, do you mean green with G? Right? And I just use the G, right? Versus going to find green. She knows where green is. We all know where green is. So I'm modeling green at this point is not giving her anything new information, right? So sort of thinking about sort of how to take that to the next step as we are building those skills. And then the last thing I have on here was supposed to be animated where it didn't show up the whole time. So you guys have been staring at it for the whole time I've been on this slide. But when Big Sister was in kindergarten, she started using the device as a speak and spell. And on her own, she didn't want any input on it, right? But that's a Facebook post saying, looks like Big Sister got hold of H's device. And it said, give, and then her nickname, a present. And she like I was in the front seat and she was in the back seat working it out, and she got like, it took her a while, right? But she was so intent on getting that, like give me a present. And she just wanted someone to find it. So the idea of like, being able to experiment with text on the device and like that, I'm very excited for what gets to that. And it's already been really helpful for. So there we go. Thank you. My ask here are just to connect with NWACS, right? And for any parents listening, to like trust your curiosity, right? Like there is no handbook. There isn't, right? Like there's this handbook, which is wonderful, right? It is great. It really is. But also there's no handbook for the activities part, right? That are going to resonate for your child. And like you are the person who is going to sit there and experiment and try to find the things that connect. Lean into their interests. Don't be afraid to do that, right? If all they ever want to talk about is sharks, lean into that with literacy. That's the time to do it. Yeah, so there we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to stop recording.